In the 1950s, they were a kid's best friends. Come on back to the Peanut Gallery, because along with Clarabelle and Buffalo Bob Smith, it's Howdy Doody time on Biography, beginning now on A&E.
I'm Jack Perkins. Welcome to Biography here on A&E. For many of you, the name takes you back to childhood, to a time when TV was young and life seemed simpler, when there was a town called Doodyville with a cast of colorful characters: Buffalo Bob, his freckle-faced friend Howdy Doody, Clarabelle the Clown, so many others, entertaining a generation of children every day. We're going to journey back to the birth of television for the story of a remarkable man and his little wooden pal who helped shape much of children's television as we know it today. Biography presents Buffalo Bob Smith and Howdy Doody.
Say, kids, what time is it? Come on, kids, let's go!
Howdy Doody and Buffalo Bob Smith, pioneers in the early days of television, kept kids across America glued to the set.
Oh, wonderful, boys and girls. Well, you know, kids, we've got lots and lots of surprises for everyone.
During the 1950s, an entire generation of children tuned in daily to Doodyville to watch a little wooden boy named Howdy Doody and his best friend, Buffalo Bob.
Well, thank you, Howdy. Yes, Howdy Doody's on the air. Time to tune in everywhere.
Bob was kind of a role model, you know, to me and to all the other kids that were watching. And that was probably my favorite thing about the show, was him being a role model and just kind of looking up to this god of a man, Buffalo Bob.
I mean, even when he told you to, you know, go out and do good deeds and save your money and be careful crossing the street, it meant something different and something more coming from him.
You know, don't you, honey, that we never chew gum or eat candy before what?
Dinner.
Before dinner, that's right.
There was no better salesman, and there'll never be a better salesman for children than Buffalo Bob.
And you know, boys and girls, if you eat Wonder Bread at all your meals, it'll help you grow up big and strong, too.
From their beginning as voices on the radio to the #1 children's television show in America, Buffalo Bob Smith and Howdy Doody changed the way kids were entertained, taught, and even sold to forever. They were a team like no other. No one had ever seen anything like the Howdy Doody show, and it would be the blueprint for scores of kid shows to come.
So this tremendous number of children were born pretty much the same year the commercial television was born, and there's been this symbiotic relationship ever since. 1947, along comes Bob with Howdy Doody, a show addressed to this audience, and we took to him like a member of the family, absolutely like a member of the family.
And if you look at today's television producers, by the way, people in this business, or even doctors and lawyers, you'll grab them. A lot of them will say, oh, yeah, I grew up watching Buffalo Bob and Howdy Doody. These are brilliant people that did okay from watching the show.
Much of the success of the Howdy Doody show relied on Bob Smith's talents, but his relationship with his pal Howdy Doody made the show legendary in the eyes of baby boomers across America. It was a relationship like no other. Howdy wasn't just a marionette, but a partner in an unstoppable television duo.
He related to Howdy so well. I mean, they had fun together, you know, and he was talking to me about a while ago, and he says, yeah, you know, I talked to Howdy, and I think of him as, you know, certainly not a puppet. And I says, you know, it's not like I ask him for stock tips. I'm not stupid, but he's something other than this thing we made. And you can tell that. You know, when Bob was talking to Howdy Doody, there was a relationship there.
Come on, Howdy, you're going to put your lifesavers over here, and you sit right down. That's the boy. Now, this is the story. Howdy picked this one out for today.
Howdy was his partner. He doesn't refer to Howdy as a puppet. It's Howdy. I mean, on this show, nobody would say, put the microphone over the puppet. It would be, you know, bring the microphone to Howdy.
But before Howdy and the success of the Howdy Doody show, Bob Smith was a talented musician, a passion that started as a young boy and became an integral part of his life and took him from his early days on radio to the birth of television. Born Robert Schmidt on November 27, 1917, to Emil, a coal miner, and his wife, Emma, Bob joined 3 older siblings in a town that would become his namesake, Buffalo, New York. Emil would be a stern taskmaster, pushing Bob to put aside childish things and accomplish what he had never been able to achieve for himself, to be a musical virtuoso. Under his father's driving force, Bob learned the discipline to become a master pianist, the skill that would help propel him to stardom.
My dad was a frustrated musician. And when I was a kid, I guess I was born with some talent. I could go to a piano and pick out any song. I could play Silent Night, one finger. I wouldn't have to poke around to find out what the note was. I just automatically played it. I had a pretty good ear.
He came from a time, you know, the Depression and what all, and from a background of coal mining, that sort of thing, where if you expected to have any kind of money at all, you had to work for it. If you expected to have twice as much money as the next guy, it's because you could hold down twice as many jobs as the next guy.
Bob studied music industriously as an organist and singer for the church choir, as a member of the school band, and sitting nightly in front of the ivories at home. Bob was inseparable from the piano. But it wasn't his destiny calling. It was his dad. While the other kids were out playing football, Smith practiced his music.
Dad came home from work. I wasn't home. Where's Robert? He's playing football. Did he practice? Well, no, he'll practice when he gets home. He'll practice when he gets home from school, he said. So I came home from the football game. We'd won, and I was so elated. Dad, we went. Where's the football? I threw him the football. He took me down into the basement where we had our furnace, opened the door to the furnace, took a butcher knife, stuck it into the football, threw it in, and made me sit there and watch the football burn. So believe me, I used to come home and practice first and play later.
Bob's hard work paid off, becoming quite an accomplished pianist. He auditioned and got hired on at a local radio station, making his musical debut at 11 years old. At 16, Smith formed a musical trio with 2 schoolmates. They called themselves the High Hatters. And on August 23rd, 1933, the group was hired to become a regular paid act on a Buffalo radio station. On that same day, Bob's father suffered a massive heart attack and would never learn that his son had gotten his big break.
And I was running up the stairs about 6 o'clock to tell my mom and dad the good news. And my mother said, Robert, get the doctor right away. Your daddy is very sick. And I ran down 2 blocks to get the doctor, and he brought me to my home in his car. By the time I got there, my dad had died. He had passed away. He never knew that we got the job.
The death of Emil Schmidt inspired Bob to fulfill a dream of success that he and his father both shared. Bob Smith immediately began touring as part of the High Hatter Trio on The Kate Smith Show. At the age of 17, he was on his way to New York City, but his stay wouldn't last long. In the summer of 1940, a homesick Bob moved back to Buffalo. It was there that he and his first-grade classmate, Mill Metz, were reacquainted, and this flirtation blossomed into a teenage romance.
I was driving down the street, and I saw her one day, and I said, Hi, Mill. Hi, Bob. How are you? Come on in the car. So I drove her home, and I said, Hey, do you want to go to the theater tonight? And she said, What theater? And I told her about this summer theater, and she said, Oh, I'd love to. So I picked her up at 7:30, and we went out to summer theater. I sold the tickets. She'd take them in at the door. And we went steady from that night on.
As their romance grew, so did Bob's career. More and more people began to recognize him and call him by his on-air name.
When I worked in radio, I was always called Bob Smith. I mean, Smilin' Bob Smith was my name when I did a solo. And I would do outside dates, and appearances, and I'd get checks, and they were payable to Bob Smith, or Smiling Bob Smith. So one day the banker said to me, "Hey, Bob, you and Mil are getting married. You're going to work as Smith all your life. You're not going to work as Schmidt, are you?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, why don't you legally change your name to Smith before you get married? Then Mil would only have to change her name once." So I thought, it will save the $5. So I thought it was a good idea. So I went legally from Robert Emil Schmidt to Robert E. Smith.
So on Thanksgiving Day, 1940, Bob and Mil officially became Mr. and Mrs. Bob Smith. Meanwhile, Smith's career was taking off. In 1946, he got a call. The NBC radio station in New York City was looking for a morning man, someone to compete against CBS Radio's top-rated and legendary Arthur Godfrey.
They hired me to do that show. Then Godfrey did quit, and someone else replaced him. And I'll say that, well, within a year, maybe a year and a half, I had the top ratings in New York in many of the segments from 6 to 9. And that was very, very thrilling for me, because to be picked out of the country to come to New York with NBC was very flattering.
But it wasn't the morning show that would make Bob Smith a household name. When NBC Radio wanted to get involved in children's programs, Bob Smith was called in to host. He developed a sidekick, a character he affectionately called Elmer, with a trademark greeting of, "Howdy Doody, kids." The phrase would outlive Elmer and set Bob Smith on a course that would make TV history. Biography will continue in a moment here on A&E. Biography's look at Howdy Doody and Buffalo Bob continues.
So Triple B Ranch stands for Big Brother Bob, and here he is now.
Few radio personalities successfully make the jump to television, but in 1947, 30-year-old Bob Smith did just that. On NBC Radio, Smith raised the ratings as a morning host for adults, but it was his kids' show, Triple B Ranch, that created the real excitement. And so Bob got a new ranch hand and some comic relief, a bumpkin named Elmer.
Bob Smith also used a falsetto kind of a voice for a little character that he called Elmer.
"Oh, kids, here comes Elmer. Hi, Elmer." And Elmer would say, "Oh, well, howdy doody." And then we'd do some real corny hee-haw type jokes. And it would always wind up, I'd say, "Well, so long, Elmer." And he'd say, "Well, howdy doody."
When Bob would introduce Elmer, Elmer would say, "Well, howdy doody, folks." Not necessarily kids, but howdy doody, folks. And the voice became, more and more people started to call the voice Howdy Doody rather than Elmer.
This was radio. We didn't have a dummy or a puppet or anything. I just talked to myself, as I just did. But the kids would come in and they'd see the show and they'd say, "We're disappointed, but we wanted to see Howdy Doody." Well, that gave us two ideas. Let's not call him Elmer anymore. We'll call him Howdy Doody. It's a cuter name. And if the kids want to see Howdy Doody, let's talk to the NBC television people, and who knows, we might do a television show.
My boss said, "Okay, we're going to have a children's show, and why don't you go down and check Bob Smith? He's a radio performer that has a children's show on Saturday morning. See what you think of him and whether there's something there that could be incorporated in television." We decided that Smith would be ideal for the show as a host, and that we'd have to have a Howdy Doody, not an Elmer.
The decision was made on a Tuesday for a live Saturday premiere. With only 4 days to prepare, Bob had to scramble to get an hour show ready for television. He pulled together talented writers Eddie Keene and Vic Campbell of Triple B Ranch and NBC producer Roger Muir. And on December 27th, 1947 at 5 o'clock, Puppet Playhouse presented the Howdy Doody Show.
Well, we put on our first show, and the Monday morning the trade papers came out with the reviews on what had been happening, and Puppet Playhouse presents Howdy Doody. Howdy Doody's a hit.
There was a point in the show before Howdy was built that Howdy was, at the very beginning, Bob was talking to a drawer because Howdy Doody was too shy to come out and meet the kids. You know, this is while they were trying to finish Howdy Doody.
3 weeks later, the first Howdy Doody marionette made its grand entrance.
Have you found that inch of space yet? Well, no, I haven't had any luck, Mr. Smith.
A young Howdy Doody that was designed to represent Bob Smith's bumpkin sidekick Elmer. And as the show's popularity grew, Howdy himself changed. He got a complete overhaul to go with his new stardom.
I'm sure I saw the original Howdy Doody on TV. I don't remember him all that well. He was definitely out of the old school concept of marionettes, where they are kind of ghoulish and exaggerated and terrifying. But the new Howdy was just a charming young guy.
When we started the show, everybody called me Mr. Smith.
We should save your peanut puzzle for a rainy day, Mr. Smith.
Howdy, all the live characters, all the puppets, all the kids in the peanut gallery. And I didn't want the kids to have to show me that respect. As soon as a kid's born, he's got to say Uncle Vic, Aunt Mary, Mr. this, Miss that. And I wanted to be one of the kids. I wanted to be on the level with them. We had the same common problems with Clarabelle or Mr. Bluster or whatever. So what should the kids call me? Not quite Bob, but not Mr. Smith. So Eddie Keene, our writer, he wrote in the story of the show that my great-grandfather was Buffalo Tom, who was the great white leader of the Sigafoose Indians. And when he died, he passed on this lovely pioneer suit to next of kin, and they found out that I was that person. So I received this, and they officially crowned me Buffalo Bob. And as far as I know, to this day, I'm still a great white leader of the Sigafoose Indians, wherever they may be.
Buffalo Bob and Howdy Doody were a winning combination. They changed the way families spent each evening. Children couldn't wait for 5:30 to sit and watch Buffalo Bob Smith and the Howdy Doody Show.
Well, how was different than other shows in the late 40s is there just wasn't anything that compared with it. You know, there's a lot of local TV, and there were probably local kid shows on TV, but just nothing that caught on the way Howdy Doody did.
When we started in 1947 and early 48, there were no Nielsen ratings or Arbitron or Hooper ratings or whatever. No way to measure what the audience was.
Buffalo Bob Smith and Howdy Doody were making their mark on television. And in 1948, an election year, just months after the premiere of the show, Eddie Keene, the head writer, decided to have Howdy run for president. This idea would be the first of many storylines that Keene would create, and its unbelievable response got the show its first sponsor.
And we had great campaign songs. Time for Howdy Doody, are you? Yes, I am. The kids would holler, oh, this is Howdy for president.
We'll announce on the show that if you're for Howdy Doody, write in, and Howdy will send you a button.
Now, if any of you kids are for Howdy Doody for president, you send in a self-addressed stamped envelope, and we'll send a Howdy Doody button to you. So Roger said, we ordered 10,000. I hope to gosh that we get that many requests. Because if we can prove that we got an audience, we might be sold. You know, we got a sponsor.
This was on a Saturday afternoon, remember? And Monday morning, I came into work, and the boss got a hold of me right away, and he said, I think you're in trouble, and I think I'm in trouble, too. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if we both got fired.
Well, it was the greatest thing that ever happened. We had something like, I don't know, 5 or 6 times as many requests as there were television sets in that area, proving that people would go to other people's houses with television sets, and there'd be 6 or 8 or 10 kids on the floor watching Howdy Doody. So this is what really got us off the ground commercially. And within, I'll say within 2 months, we were solidly sold out.
In the early shows, it was Buffalo Bob, Howdy Doody, and the Peanut Gallery. But soon, Bob needed help, and Clarabelle the Clown was born.
Clarabelle started out as a stagehand who, you know, every so often would hand Bob something, you know, just in the course of a show. You know, he's going to do a commercial and he needs the Ovaltine, you know, the product. So, you know, the guy had handed to him, and one day one of the NBC executives said to him, you know, Bob, that looks terrible. You can't just have this guy, you know, walking up and handing you something. put him in a costume, make him something.
We've sent Clarabelle over to Mr. Cobb's store for a big, big supply of fresh, delicious Wonder Bread.
The Howdy Doody show was growing by leaps and bounds. As the audience increased, so did the sponsorship, and ultimately so did the population of Doodyville.
Ah, yes, sir.
There were live characters like Chief Thunder Thud and Princess Summer Fall Winter Spring, and more playmates for Howdy Doody. Flub-a-dub, Dilly Dally, and the villain Phineas T. Bluster, to name a few. This was just the beginning of the Howdy Doody show's overwhelming popularity. But fans weren't content to just watch Doodyville on TV. They wanted to go there. Millions of kids wrote in and requested tickets, competing for 40 seats. Into the 1950s, every kid on the block wanted to be part of the Peanut Gallery.
Once we got started with the Peanut Gallery, the requests came in, and pretty soon I used to try and keep a file of requests and then fulfill requests in the order that we got the request. I ended up with file after file, file cabinets full. Well, each sponsor would get so many tickets. Each of the performers would have a few tickets, and we would give as many as we could out to the general public. But it finally got to the point where pregnant mothers would be sending in requests for tickets for their unborn because they knew there was a waiting list, and it took a year or 2 or 3 years.
Peanut Gallery was very important. It was necessary. It was necessary. They were part of the show. Bob talked to Peanut Gallery children almost on every show. They provided the rousing opening, the singing of the song, "It's Howdy Doody Time," and they were important for producing the laughter and excitement that was written into each script.
The gallery would laugh at the gags and cheer for the characters, but some of the biggest laughs came from the antics of the kids themselves. On one occasion, a Peanut Gallery kid took the most famous bathroom break in television history.
So many of you ask what happened on the night of Halloween when everyone was hysterical and Buffalo Bob had to leave the scene. It was during an old-time movie about a man named Rip Van Winkle when a 4-year-old boy from the gallery told Bob that he had to tinkle. Well, Buffalo Bob couldn't take him, so he pointed to someone who could, but the little kid didn't follow directions. He just walked to a pumpkin and stood. Now, the rest of the story is obvious, and we didn't even need a mop because our little friend had great aim, and he never spilled a drop.
Biography will continue in a moment here on A&E. Biography's look at Howdy Doody and Buffalo Bob continues.
So you kids wear a great big smile and you sing out good and loud together with all of us here. It's Howdy Doody time. Come on, kids, let's go!
Bob Smith was on his way to making television history, but it was his early radio shows that helped him get his foot in the door.
Okay, now, how many of you are 8 years old and over? Let me see your hands.
And when he teamed up with a marionette named Howdy Doody, he burst onto television and created a following of children across America. From then on, he would be known to millions of kids and parents alike as Buffalo Bob, Howdy Doody's best friend. As the show's popularity reached an all-time high, it became one of the most profitable programs on the NBC television network. And even though the show appeared seamless, there were technical problems and professional issues that Bob, the cast, and crew had to solve. The show itself was live. There were daily audio recordings, rehearsals, and the expected gaffes and foul-ups. Behind the scenes, Buffalo Bob was a cut-up and a perfectionist.
Yes, we had a lot of bad rehearsals, and we had a lot of fun in rehearsals. A lot of kidding and joking around. And as I say, Bob being an easy person to work with, he sort of set the stage, set the atmosphere, so to speak.
One day I thought I'd have some fun with the kids in the control room. Bob Rippon was directing at the time. And I said, look right into the lens because he was in the control room. I said, hey, Rip, when during the commercial, Wonder Ed, either I went Howdy or in the peanut gallery. He'd say, wait a minute, Bob. Hey, there's a crack up on the boom mic. And all the engineers had come running to see what was wrong. Is there a cable undone or whatever? Oh, we had a lot of fun on the show.
Each episode had its silly problems for residents of Dutyville, but after the cameras were turned off and the kids went home, members of the cast and crew had to face some tough issues. In December of 1952, NBC and the Howdy Doody Show were faced with one of the first labor disputes in television history. The show's profitability had cast members concerned about their own salaries. Bob Keeshan, who played Clarabelle and later went on to create and star in Captain Kangaroo, got an agent and organized cast members on a walkout.
So Roger handled the whole thing, and he said to Keeshan, and he said to the agent, he said, you can't collective bargain. There is no collective bargaining. That's against the AFTRA code. One of you can hold out for more, but you can't hold out as a group. That's collective bargaining.
I went to all of the performers involved and told them the same story and said that if they didn't come to terms with us on NBC's terms, that would be the end of them on the show. Well, the agent convinced them that he was stronger than NBC or the contract that we had with AFTRA. So one day I found out we had a big hole in our staff. 4 or 5 of them were no longer with us.
After the loss of Clarabelle and 3 other cast members, the Howdy Doody Show appeared to be on shaky ground. But Bob Smith placed a call to longtime friend Nick Nicholson back in Buffalo and found not only a new Clarabelle, but a musical arranger as well. The show went on.
Our conductor, Mr. Nick. Hey!
After 2 short years as Clarabelle, Nicholson went on to write and arrange music full-time for the Howdy Doody Show. Yet another Clarabelle search led Bob to musician Lou Anderson.
Bob Smith had a daytime show beside the Howdy Doody Show, and so we were the vocal group on that show, and so when they wanted to make a change, for some reason they came to me because I'd been acting like a fool, I guess, and so they said, did you want to be Clarabelle?
He happened to be about the same size as Nick, so we got to Lou and said, hey, how would you like to come on the Howdy Doody Show?
He asked me a couple questions, you know, can you juggle? No. Can you do magic? No. Can you do anything? No. Perfect. Okay, so they said, Clarabelle's not supposed to be able to do anything anyway. So it worked out good.
You're going to play the bass drum.
Bass drum, Buffalo Bob.
And he's going to play it from the inside, right?
Inside, Buffalo Bob.
Are you ready, Mr. Ned?
I'm ready, Buffalo Bob.
Let's go. There you are, Clarabelle. Ooh.
Even though the Howdy Doody Show had faced adversity, the show was as celebrated as ever. With its success, sponsors changed the way they looked at their young viewers. 1950 alone saw $15 million generated from Howdy licensed items. Buffalo Bob himself was a stellar pitchman and happy to oblige those clamoring for his services. During the show, Wonder Bread, Twinkies, Rice Krispies, and Campbell's Soup all paid to have their products sold to a nation of hungry kids.
At that time, you know, a Mars candy bar was considered nourishment for a child. So that was okay. You know, that was okay. Welch's grape juice was okay. Wonder Bread was okay. But there were many sponsors that they turned down. But there was nobody that could. If Arthur Godfrey could sell for adults, he was the best salesman in the world for adults. There was no better salesman, and there'll never be a better salesman for children than Buffalo Bob.
Bob has always said that, you know, he understood the TV had a lot of power to persuade. And he was one of the first shows that demonstrated, you know, the TV had the power to persuade, and certainly the power to persuade kids.
Not only was Buffalo Bob a great salesman and entertainer, but the popularity of the Howdy Doody Show made him a huge star. Person to Person's Edward R. Murrow interviewed Bob, broadcasting from Smith's home in New Rochelle. Buffalo Bob was also making special appearances and starring in many hour-long Howdy Doody Show specials. And if that weren't exhausting enough, Bob was still getting up every morning to host his radio show, then preparing for the daytime Bob Smith variety show, and finally rehearsing and shooting the Howdy show every evening. The price of fame was taking its toll on Bob. He was about to burn out. In September of 1954, his hectic schedule finally caught up with him.
I was doing the early morning radio show and Howdy. I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning, working until 8:30, 7. It was about 8 o'clock when I'd get home. And I woke up one Labor Day morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, and the trucks loaded with cement were driving across my chest. And I just felt terrible.
It was over a Labor Day weekend, and I got a call from, I think it was from his wife, saying that he had been taken to the hospital with this heart attack. And we had to scramble that day to get a show on the air without him.
The heart attack was more than a medical crisis. Parents worried about Buffalo Bob's absence and how their kids would react to the heart attack of their hero. For NBC, Bob's speedy recovery was very important, not only for ratings, but to keep sponsors happy. Biography will continue in a moment here on A&E. Biography's look at Howdy Doody and Buffalo Bob continues.
My friend and a friend of every kid in the country, in person, Buffalo Bob! Hey, hi, boys and girls!
After his heart attack, and for the first time since Howdy Doody went on the air, Buffalo Bob Smith wouldn't be able to be a part of the show. At his doctor's insistence, Bob and Mill flew to the relaxing beaches of Florida to help speed his recovery and get away from the stress of live TV. But as soon as Bob was well enough, NBC set up a studio in his New Rochelle home, a place where kids could continue to see their hero and sponsors could continue to get their products pitched. By January of 1955, Bob was working from Pioneer Village.
Finally, as he recuperated, we wanted to get him back on television. So NBC built a studio in his basement. And we had a single camera in the basement, and it was hooked into our studio as like the fourth. We normally had 3 cameras in the studio, but this was like a 4th camera position.
And NBC took the studio that they had built in my home for doing the radio show and converted it into a television studio, where we had a 1-camera setup with a camera in the control room, and they'd shoot, and I was in what they call Pioneer Village on a mission. See, the sponsors wanted me there to do the commercials.
Bob was doing live remote spots, staying on air just long enough to read the commercials.
Good to see everybody.
NBC
here.
also had Bob make special appearances in the studio.
Pioneer Village. Did you see the snow in Pioneer Village yesterday?
But while he was off on an adventure in Pioneer Village, the 2000th episode of the Howdy Doody show would air. Buffalo Bob was painfully absent from the studio for almost a year.
Of course, as for me, boys and girls, you know, I've got to get right back to Pioneer Village.
So I could do all the commercials from Pioneer Village. They'd just say, let's see what Buffalo Bob's doing in Pioneer Village. And boom, they'd take the camera that shot me in New Rochelle, and I'd do my Kellogg's Rice Krispies or my Colgate or whatever from there. So I did that until the following Labor Day. I was from my home in Pioneer Village from January 1955 until Labor Day. And then Labor Day, I was allowed to go back into New York by my cardiologist.
When Buffalo Bob returned full-time to Doodyville, it was just in time to be part of another landmark in television history. The Howdy Doody Show became the first program to be broadcast in living color.
We got a call from General Sarnoff saying, go, and we had a title card with our Howdy Doody test pattern on it, and it was the first color scene after the official approval.
Making the transition from radio to television, the Howdy Doody Show became an advertising and educational leader. And since appearing in living color, it was the hottest thing to hit the air. But there was a new crop of television shows vying for ad dollars and audience ratings, afternoon talk shows and other kids' programs. The Mickey Mouse Club was launched. And for the first time since Howdy's premiere in 1947, the show was faced with real competition.
And Walt Disney had come out with the Mickey Mouse Club, which was also awfully good and an awful lot of fun. And, you know, it was a problem for Bob. I mean, you know, Disney had all the technology in the West Coast, all the technology of, you know, the Disney studios, and Bob was still kind of limited by New York television, so it was a tough contest.
They moved us because that was considered prime time then, late in the afternoon, where they could put shows like Mike Douglas and all these talk shows that would appeal to everybody and not just kids. For that, you don't find any networks running kids shows in the afternoon.
And that's what happened. Cartoons started to happen on Saturday mornings, because we were on Saturday mornings the last year or two. And the whole business just changed, that's all.
On September 27th, 1960, the end finally arrived. After 13 years and 2,543 shows, Buffalo Bob and Howdy Doody had their last adventure. An entire generation of kids who had grown up watching the happenings in Doodyville would have to say goodbye.
Goodbye from us to you.
Even the silent character Clarabelle broke with tradition to bid farewell.
And I'll never forget, we knew it was the last show. It was on an hour instead of just a half an hour, from 10 to 11 Saturday morning.
Clarabelle was always interrupting Bob, saying, I got to tell you something. I got something special. You know, all of them, they kept putting me off and putting me off, putting me off, till the last 2 minutes of the show. He said, okay, what is it? You know, what is it, you fool?
I don't believe it. You can talk. Well, Clarabelle, this is your last chance. Now, Clarabelle, if you can talk, prove it. Let's hear you say something.
He went, I said, you mean you can talk? I said, you can learn? I shook him. I said, well, if you can talk, say something. And the camera dollied right into him, and he looked into the lens, and he said, goodbye, kids.
Goodbye, kids.
Biography will continue in a moment here on A&E. Biography's look at Howdy Doody and Buffalo Bob continues. After the Howdy Doody show went off the air, an entire generation of kids would no longer be able to enjoy the stories and characters that made Doodyville real. And even though Buffalo Bob returned to the world outside television, he kept up the same frenzied pace. But this time it was business ventures. Retirement saw Buffalo Bob as the owner of a liquor store in upstate New York. Bob now had more time to spend with his wife, Mill, and 3 sons, Robin, Ronnie, and Chris. But it wasn't long until he was entertaining again.
I bought a liquor store in New Rochelle. I had some key employees that worked with me on Howdy, and I wanted to take care of them, so I bought the liquor store and had them run it. I bought 3 radio stations up in Maine. And I bought a lot of properties in Florida, undeveloped properties, and thank the good Lord I did very well with all of my ventures. And I was a businessman.
While Bob tried his hand in business, the fans kept the memory of Buffalo Bob and the Howdy Doody show alive. It was those grown-up members of the Peanut Gallery that wouldn't let him forget his Howdy Doody days.
I was 9 years old, keep in mind. And after school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I got on the bus, and I took this M bus from the south end to the north end, and I walked around, you know, little kid, and I look up and I see a big sign that says Liquors. And I said, is Buffalo Bob here? And he said, I'm Buffalo Bob. And I saw this man, and I'll never forget it. He was wearing a checked shirt, okay, and black horn-rimmed glasses. Well, I wasn't Buffalo Bob. He didn't have, you know, the buckskin suit on. That's my first time that I ever met Bob, and we, you know, here I am now. This would be 1959 or 1960. Now I'm 44 years old, and we are still best of friends. And if he was sitting here now, he would tell you he remembers the story.
My buddy Bert. When I had the liquor store, he used to come in there and bother me for tickets for himself and for his friends and whatever. And Bert was a lovable little kid. He was just so great.
For the next 10 years, Bob Smith tried to learn to relax. But in January 1970, in the midst of the Vietnam War, the generation that grew up with the Howdy Doody show faced insecure times. They were looking for guidance. And who better than everybody's favorite uncle, Buffalo Bob.
Oh, look at the gallery! Hey!
He walked out on stage, and the place went nuts. So they gave him a standing ovation. And in a way, it was like he's come back to help us. In other words, he's been away for so long. We're in the midst of this war. We didn't want to be in this war. Where's this person, this father image? And there it was Buffalo Bob.
We've had our rehearsal. Now let's do it. It's Howdy Doody time.
I mean, it was nuts. It was insane. He got very emotional. And every show that we did, once I joined him, it was the same thing. You would see long-haired freaks, guys, that looked like dope fanatics, I'm not saying they were, would come over to Bob and say, "Can I hug you?"
Oh, who was the clown on Howdy Do? Clarabelle. He now is Captain Kangaroo. Clarabelle.
And it was then that I realized really what an integral part of the kids' lives the Howdy Doody show was. And still is. And I guess in the next 6 years, I did over 500 different colleges.
After the colleges, the college kids graduated and then got married and had kids, and the next outlet for Bob was shopping malls.
When we do malls today, it's basically the alumni that are the ones that promote the families going to see us. And the kids don't know any more about Howdy Doody than what the parents told them. But the alumni bring the kids, and the alumni bring their parents because they watched them when they were kids. So we're actually entertaining the 3 generations.
Bob singing, playing piano, me playing clarinet, and then busting balloons and playing the seltzer the shell game where he gets squirted and all that stuff. And so it's kind of the same thing we were doing, but it appealed to the mothers and fathers and their mothers and fathers, and then the little kids who wouldn't remember it at all, of course. So we had 3 generations coming to those shows. The kids got into it right away.
Buffalo Bob hadn't changed. He was still entertaining and doing what he did best. The generation that had grown up with Howdy Doody was now taking their kids to see Buffalo Bob Smith, to be entertained by the same stories that made them laugh and cheer over a decade earlier.
You see Bob come out, and like maybe the first thing he'll say is, "Hey kids, what time is it?" Which, we respond to, "Oh, it's Howdy Doody time." And that's like the last time he's talking to people my age. And then immediately he has such a rapport with kids.
The revival was such a huge success, the decision was made to make a TV comeback. Their syndicated show, the new Howdy Doody Show, lasted from August 1976 to January of 1977. It was a pale shadow of what Howdy had been in its prime.
We had so much wonderful press all over the country that there were requests to syndicate the show. And I think the show would have been a success, really, had we stayed with the old formula.
By 1987, Buffalo Bob had earned his place in television history. 40 years after Howdy made his debut, Bob Smith, Clarabelle, and Howdy Doody were honored at the Museum of Broadcasting. It was also the year of Howdy Doody's 40th anniversary special. Nationally syndicated by over 200 stations across the country, it featured Johnny Carson, Milton Berle, and former Peanut John Ritter, among many others.
You get the seltzer!
Today, Bob and Mill live in North Carolina. He still tours regularly, making kids of all ages smile and laugh with the help of his sidekick Howdy and friend Clarabelle.
Bob was talking to one child. So when I was watching, he was talking to me. He wasn't talking to you. He was talking to me. It was my show. And when we did the 40th anniversary show, I reminded him of something. I can't stand up, but I'll tell you, he used to stand in front of that peanut gallery, put one hand in his pocket, and lean into the camera. Really talk to that person at home. It was magic.
Hey, yes, sir. So long, kids. See you on television.
Buffalo Bob Smith. His style and talent helped shape children's television. He was a pioneer during the birth of a new medium, a well-loved father to the first generation to grow up with TV. Now, here's what's coming up on our next biography. Hope you'll join us. I'm Jack Perkins. Thanks for watching.
Say, kids, what time is it?
Now you can own a video cassette of this program. Call 1-800-423-1212 and you will receive the program you've just seen for only $19.95 plus shipping and handling. Call 1-800-423-1212.
Say howdy do to you. Let's give a rousing. Let's give our...
Social Services is up in arms when a young man with Down syndrome is accused of murder. Inspector Frost leads the search for the truth tomorrow on an all-new A&E mystery movie. Now, Napoleon busts are being busted all over England. Does someone have a bone to pick with Bonaparte? Join us for Sherlock Holmes Mysteries next on A&E. It's time well spent.